couple of sips of it.
And then you can stop grunting at people and talking.
I don't know. That won't change. That's just how I am.
For Emma and I, we kind of just communicate by until the first couple of coffees being consumed. It's a good job we're both just as antisocial as each other.
Yes, yes. I don't get away with that very much. Okay, great. So, yeah, it's 7:30 in the UK and much later across the rest of Europe and Asia, and I believe it's evening in Oceania, according to this graphic that I have up. So, Christian, would you like to go first?
Okay. I haven't been doing much. Let me just. I've actually got some work on, which I need to do every morning, well, from about 8 till 1 o'clock this week, and maybe this next week as well. So that's why I wanted to catch up in this meeting. I've got one thing assigned to me at the moment, which is on website 1, which is organise a screencast. And I don't mind sort of going ahead a little bit on that, but I really want to catch up with Thomas and Sam to get their input, and maybe actually Brian as well, because it was him who actually wrote the pivotal tracker story. I was talking to Thomas about it, and I suggested using a collaboration tool called Celtex, which is a tool designed to write either a screenplay or a film or an audio-video broadcast, which is what a screencast is. So you just sort of crash away and write things, dialogue and scenes and things like that, and then it can produce an output so that somebody who is producing the video can go ahead and do that, and then whoever's going to do the voiceover or whatever clips are put in can come in at the right points. But I think it's not just down to one person. I think everybody needs to, and I'm a bit unsure how to progress for that. And it's got to happen in the afternoons. Also, unfortunately, I'm playing badminton now on Wednesday evenings between 7 and 8 UK time, which falls exactly on the website 1 development meeting time, so I can't attend those either.
Yeah.
And that's not just for the next few weeks, it's probably until Christmas.
Yes.
I have been playing around in my spare time still with my event thing, but that's not official. That's really just me trying to learn more and on Rails and myself, and I'm using that as a basis, as a little project to work on.
Okay. That's a story that you have open on website 1, isn't it?
Not the event thing. No, I sort of helped. It was because there's a lot of issues around. Oh, can we see like past the scrums? Like this scrum. Unless you know who pressed the host button, you can't easily find them on the website because they sort of roll off the event screen, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yes, there's.
So you can find it by saying, "Oh, I know David Corkin hosted this one," and look under you.
Yes.
it's not always, you don't always know who pressed the button up front or who's going to host it.
No, we don't know this thing.
So I had there were also a number of bugs related, well, within the event thing, and I walked through. I wrote some notes about it, basically, how I would do it if I was going to start from scratch. Using indexes on the database so one can query. At the moment it seems to do a full table scan on the event table.
Yeah.
And okay, it's working at the moment, but the event, as the number of events on the table increases, which it must be doing because of all the pair hookups which are taking place. Last week on Wednesday there were 86 in the table. It'd be interesting what they are tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. I know that. Thomas counted them during the developers meeting, didn't he?
Yeah, I did go through, Craig, the entity relationship diagram, and I've thrown in a few comments on the work happening on OSRA as well. So I have been sort of looking at stuff without actually having specific tasks assigned to me.
All right. Do you make an entity relationship diagram with Railroad either?
I didn't do it. I was looking at the one which was Mutsahim produced it, I believe. Is that true, Craig?
Say again?
Your ERD over at OSRA?
Yeah, I heard about the ERD. Sorry, I just didn't hear the last comment.
Oh, who produced it?
Mottersson produced it. But I think there's a link on the top of the ERD diagram that actually takes you to the place where it was created. That could be misinformation. Let me just have a look.
Well, this is Mottersson's name against it, yeah.
Yeah, look at the top. Download XLSX file. Hover over that link. Where's that db.tt? I don't know whether that's... No, it's not. It's Dropbox. I thought it might have been there. I'm not sure where he did it. It's a little bit jumbled at the moment because I think a lot of the one-to-many relationships are the wrong way around.
Yeah, I saw that. That was one of the comments. And there weren't big things. I just suggested, well, instead of having an origin and a current address, put a date time field in the address field. Then you get a history. I thought that could be useful in case you need to find people, if they're being moved from pillar to post because of events in Syria. That could be useful. But I understand you want to get something out on the first page, so that makes perfect sense, and I don't want to bring up all the thing about validation in the database or outside of the database.
Have you seen that discussion?
I have, and I think indexes and uniqueness and stuff you do have to do in the database, but
I'd be interested in anyone's opinion on it.
Well, I did put my 2 cents worth in there, and get phase 0 out, and then put it in 0.1 or something like that. You've got to do that and I think, if you are looking for uniqueness, the chances are you're going to be searching on that field anyway.
Yeah, I think yes. I think we're less worried about uniques. I think I'm more worried about nils getting into the database. As soon as you've got nils in the data, and this is, people think you're criticizing Rails, but it's more of a, I think relational databases are fantastic, but the one big error they made when they designed them was to allow nils to be put in so easily. And if you've got nils on your database and you're in Rails land and not thinking of the database, you're just thinking of the code, whenever you execute a query for blank, all the nils are ignored. And whenever you execute a query for present, all the nils are ignored. So you've got a subset of data that's effectively not there or lost.
Yeah.
And that just worries me a little bit. Maybe it's too much. I mean, as you say, I think phase note. If we get, it would be really nice to get a deliverable out to the customer, and then we can get a little bit more choosy over what we do. But if they've got something that's using, it's adding real benefit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also they can see it, and maybe I don't think the CSV pull-in was done yet, but that's something they're going to do, and then we'll try, and then maybe need some extra validation. So that could ping pong back and forth a little bit. And also going back to what you were saying about that, I totally appreciate and sort of agree with what you're saying, and even sometimes a sensible default.
Yeah. But I think this is what's good. Then the default needs to be. The argument is then whether it was getting quite pedantic. I think they were saying don't put the default in the database at all. So then you've got this whole Rails validation where everything has a validate field set or a default set, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think they basically we're using. Yeah, I don't want to get too up on it because I have kind of a semi-strong opinion. It would be ridiculous to say that I don't. But the bit that confuses me is that if we're using a relational database, we should be building on the strengths of a relational database. If we're just using a data store, that's fine. And I think we need to decide what technology we're using. And maybe we're using a relational database because all we want is a data store, but that's what comes with Heroku, and it's the least effort. But if we've made that decision consciously rather than because what it's given to us, to me that makes a difference. I don't know. That sounds silly.
The only thing I could add to what you're saying is when I've worked on projects where the database constraints have been done perfectly, the database is like so hard.
Absolutely, it's static, and making a change is a nightmare.
It can be so awkward to work with, especially in a development situation. So,
no, I do understand that, and I said that right from the very start. If you do put a lot of constraints on the database, schema changes become so much more difficult. But then I've also seen the. I mean, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because I've also seen the reverse done, where you're in a situation where someone's wrote something in Rails, say for example, and then someone else comes along a little later, and they're not using Rails, or they just write a little shell script that puts information into the database that wasn't foreseen, and then the whole world starts to unravel quite quickly.
You've got to just have one app. As soon as you've got maybe two ways of putting data in, command line interface to push in an update on the CSV file from the spreadsheet because one came in 2 weeks later, a bit late, from some other department somewhere else, or however it works.
When it's 6 of one and half a dozen of another, I really, to an extent, I don't think it matters which decision you make, as long as everyone understands that decision and you can bear it in mind when you're coding.
And also, the decision doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be changed at any time.
It could be, let's decide this now, just for the next 2 weeks, to get phase 0 out.
Yeah.
And then everyone knows where they are. So it doesn't have to be set in stone. But I can see. So I didn't put more of them. Just I put the comment up there about what was it? It was the race condition.
Yeah.
And really, I don't think when the shit hits the fan, someone's going to change that config thing, push it up to 2. And then suddenly the second problem is going to occur.
Yeah.
So you don't rely on I wouldn't rely on config to sort that out.
I was a little bit like you. I stayed out of that one because otherwise it starts to get a little bit like a
Emacs versus my.
yeah, and I infinitely conscious of that, and I didn't want that to happen. And I thought, as the conversation stands, it's really quite constructive and amicable. But I didn't want to stop. But I agree with you on that. That to me, that seems a bit. You know, you've got web worker threads there for a reason, and setting them to one didn't seem to me to be the best solution to solve the problem.
Okay.
But as we say, it's not a problem that we need to worry about. And everyone's input was greatly appreciated.
So I'm not getting commit points and kudos and stuff for all this work, which is probably something to think about.
I think also, I mean, you said badminton, but I mean, this is one of the big problems. I mean, agile ventures and sport, it's incredibly difficult to fit the two in, especially if it's a sociable sport where you're meeting with other people.
You mean like instead of like just going to the gym and working out?
Well, I mean, if it's a gym and it's open 24/7, I guess you can fit that in any time. But I mean, you're doing badminton. That tends to be
you've got to book
a little bit after tea. So people come in, have tea, and then tea settles down, and then they go and do badminton. I do judo, and all these things where you're meeting with other people tend to clash head on with agile ventures, and the last thing you want to do is become some couch potato that never leaves their computer. So it is difficult managing time, very difficult. I really understand the problem that you're having there.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too, and I guess that's why I've missed quite a lot of things apart from these morning scrums lately. Craig, we've kind of overrun our time box.
Sorry.
So we've got time for you to share a quick update.
I'm still working on my cucumber features. I think Pavel's starting to get a little bit upset that they're not done yet. But every time I send up a pull request, we find out either I've used atrocious grammar and it all needs fixed typo-wise because it's not clear, or there's another feature that we want added in. So I'm working hopefully on the last few features, submitting a pull request, or there's a pull request in, it needs finishing off, and then hopefully that's the last of catching up with features that weren't written from the start as a chore, and everyone's now writing features as they push their own code.
Okay, so these are features that are already implemented but not described in Cucumber.
Yeah, yes. And then I've still got a story to do for this sprint, which ends at the end of this week. But we're waiting for. It's dependent on organisational code, and Sly's doing organisational code, and that's still under review on a pull request. So I'm waiting for that to be committed really before I can get on and do that. Which is no hardship at the moment, but it may become a blocker if I get these my pull requests finished for the features.
Yeah. In which case, it becomes a case of trying to synchronize with code that's not committed to the main branch yet. It's not easy.
I think it's kind of more difficult because it's such a small project at the moment. So every model is practically related to models that haven't been created yet. Pavel also thinks, and he's probably right, that we're such a young team, we still haven't sorted out our workflows perfectly. So he reckons there's probably a little bit of inefficiency there, and I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, and nobody's still quite sure, or some people aren't quite sure how much time in the week they can put in and that's going to vary from week to week in any case. Right. And myself, I've got no updates today, and no definite plans yet. I may be popping into Agile Ventures now and again through the day, but I've got some other things to deal with. And I'll see you this time tomorrow, I hope.
Magic. Thank you very much.
That's it.